Greetings and welcome. My name is Russell Paul Arthur. I am the creator of Grace Sovereignty Academy, where I teach men and women the lawful procedures on how to reclaim and reassert their sovereign freedoms and rights so they can protect their life and wealth from a corrupt and unjust world. And in this video presentation, I will share with you a few details on how you, as a sovereign man or woman, can exist and operate in this world with your own sovereign court, where you become the court, judge and jury of your own life, where you can express your absolute authority to handle all lawful matters that concerns both your life and your estate from within your own private and sovereign venue and jurisdiction that is not part of and not subject to any other venue and jurisdiction of any crown, state or government within this world. So how is this possible? First and foremost, you need to know this. You were born with natural and inherent freedoms and rights. You were born with free will, intention and purpose. This means you, as an individual man or woman, was born with the freedoms and rights to self-determine, self-direct and self-govern your own life, independent from any other authority, where you hold the absolute and original authority over your own life. However, many years ago, you unknowingly abandoned your sovereign authority and powers when your life and your estate, when your freedoms, rights and value as a human being was registered and bonded to a nation state. You unknowingly abandoned your sovereign authority and powers when you took on the role of a registered citizen, which is a corporate legal title and entity owned and controlled by the state, and where you as a citizen operate within the corporate legal venue and jurisdiction of the state. This means your life and your estate is legally bound to all the legislations, acts, statutes, rules and regulations that are imposed and enforced upon you by the state, all of which is done through voluntary consent, because your life and estate was voluntarily registered to the state. Because when you identify and act as a citizen, you are agreeing with and accepting the role and bondage of a citizen. And finally, you are under the authoritative control of the state by voluntary consent, because the state cannot impose and enforce conditions upon you against your own free will. The state cannot own you, control you, persecute or punish you against your own free will, as this would be a definition of slavery. This would be a criminal act and a violation of your freedoms and rights. So to reconfirm, you do not have and do not exercise your sovereign authority and powers because you voluntarily consented to have your life and estate legally bonded to a nation state, where you operate as a corporate legal entity known as a citizen that is under the authoritative control of the state. However that may be, one thing shall always remain true. You have the natural and inherent freedoms and rights to self-determine your life. This means you can exercise your free will choice to unwind your life and estate from corporate legal bondage to the nation state. You can rescind and revoke all registrations, contracts and bonds that you have formed with the state, so that you can release your life and estate from being under the authoritative control of the state. This is a lawful procedure, a step-by-step process that we teach within Grace Sovereignty Academy. We teach men and women how to lawfully cancel citizenship, how to reclaim and reassert their natural and inherent freedoms and rights to self-determine, self-direct and self-govern their own lives, free and independent from any other authority in this world. And the lawful procedure of cancelling citizenship is a two-pronged approach, where you cancel and unwind from citizenship as you claim, assert and establish your authority and powers as a sovereign man or woman at the same time, because it's a transition from citizenship to sovereignty. For you to become sovereign, where you hold the absolute and supreme authority over the matters of your own life and estate, you must establish your own sovereign court, so that you can adjudicate any lawful matters that concern your life and estate as you navigate through this world. Because once you are sovereign, you are no longer part of a nation state. You no longer operate your life or estate within the venue and jurisdiction of a state. You no longer operate under the authority of public courts. Establishing your own sovereign court consists of three important elements. Those three important elements of a sovereign court are court record, court petitions, and court claims, where you as a sovereign can initiate and form your own court record, petitions and claims to adjudicate any lawful matters concerning your life and estate, where you as a sovereign can preside over and decide over any lawful matters concerning your life and estate. So let's speak to each one of those three important elements. We start with a court record. As a sovereign, you need a court record that establishes, substantiates and upholds your sovereign status and standing in this world, where your actions are documented, are recognised and recorded by a court, are adjudicated and filed within a court as proof to affirm and support all lawful matters that you enact to uphold and protect your life and estate as a sovereign man or woman. Next, as a sovereign, you have the authority and powers to initiate court petitions, where you can start a hearing, complaint or procedure within a court setting, where you can present and debate a subject, issue or dispute within a court setting. And finally, as a sovereign, you have the authority and power to initiate court claims as a respondent or defendant, where you can make a particular claim, where you can make a case to address a lawful matter that concerns your life and estate. And so when you become sovereign, you can assert your authority and power to open, hold, adjudicate and close your own sovereign court, where you become the court, judge and jury to deal with any matters that concerns your life and estate. When you become sovereign, you must have your own sovereign court, because when you cancel citizenship, you no longer participate as a citizen within the venue and jurisdiction of the nation state. You are no longer under the authoritative control of the public courts. The public courts are established to adjudicate the corporate legal matters of the citizens of the state. The public courts are for the general public who operate within the public domain. When you are sovereign, you are no longer part of the general public or public domain. You as a sovereign will operate in a special, private and sovereign domain that is established, separate and independent from the public venue and jurisdiction. From your own sovereign court, you as a sovereign authority can settle any lawful matters that concerns any public authorities, officials or citizens, where your sovereign court communicates with a public court, where any matter concerning your life and estate is settled between two different courts, between two different venues and jurisdictions. Rather than you stand in the dock of a public court as a citizen who is legally bound and under the authority of that public court, you shall instead address any public court as a sovereign from your own sovereign court, where there are specific procedures that you can use to deal with and settle any claims that arise from the public, where you can protect your life and estate, where you can neutralize any actions and claims that arise from corrupt and unjust rulings and regulations that are imposed by the state, its law enforcement or courts. Remember, you as a sovereign man or woman, when you cancel citizenship, you unwind from the bondage of state law, law enforcement and the public court system, where the state no longer has venue and jurisdiction over the matters of your life and estate. However, even though you are not under the authoritative control of state law, law enforcement and the public court system, this does not mean that you are above the law. You are still accountable and answerable to law and justice, where you are personally responsible and liable for any harm, injury or damages that you have caused to another human being, where justice truly works and serves. However, rather than a state authority preside over and decide over the matters of your life and estate, you as a sovereign court would address the matters privately. You will preside over and decide over the matters concerning of your life and estate, and do so within the context of law and honour. Law and honour is fundamental and necessary for a society of men and women to cooperate and function together with order and fairness. A sovereign man or woman is a representation and exemplar of law and honour. Everyone that joins Grace Sovereignty Academy also joins the sovereign law form of our Grace Private Society. Grace Private Society is a sovereign body of sovereign men and women who cooperate for mutual benefit and support, who stand for law and honour. We have formed a society with our own private and sovereign venue and jurisdiction, with its own private court and judiciary known as the Grace Private Court. Grace Private Court is where our sovereign members choose to exercise their natural and inherent freedoms and rights. We have created and structured an entire private court system with its own law form that guides and supports all our sovereign members on how to establish and exercise their own sovereign law, court records, court petitions and court claims, so that our sovereign members can take authority and control over the lawful matters of their individual lives and estates, free and independent from any other authority in this world. We formed Grace Private Court to uphold, protect and preserve the status and standing of our sovereign members, to ensure their most fundamental freedoms and rights are secure at all times. Grace Private Court is established as a sovereign court with its own private law form that encompasses contract law, trust law and the law of equity, the highest laws of the land. This means all authorities within the public domain that exist as corporate legal entities are authorities with inferior powers to a sovereign. In relation to a sovereign man or woman, these corporate legal entities such as nation states, citizens, corporations, law enforcement and public courts, they can never override or overrule the law form, venue and jurisdiction of our sovereign courts. Our sovereign courts stand superior and take precedence over any and all other jurisdictions that operate as corporate legal bodies. And this includes any legislations, acts, statutes, rules and regulations which are really corporate bylaws of a crown or a nation state that operates as a corporate legal body. These corporate bylaws, they only apply to registered citizens who are in corporate legal bondage to the crown or state. They do not apply to sovereign men and women. So there you have it. Within Grace Sovereignty Academy, we teach our members on how to become their own sovereign court. We provide a private court system that allows, guides and supports our members on how to establish, assert and defend their status and standing as sovereign men and women, with natural and inherent freedoms and rights in this world. Together as sovereigns, we represent law and honour. Together as sovereigns, we stand for freedom and justice. Together as sovereigns, we safeguard ourselves from a world of corrupt nation states that operate with unjust laws and unjust law enforcement. And if you are looking for shelter from the injustices of this world, if you are looking for a justice and court system that actually empowers and protects your freedoms and rights as a sovereign, if you are looking for sanity and sense, then perhaps you would consider joining our Grace Sovereignty Academy so that you can transition from citizenship to sovereignty.